Hey everyone, Gary here. As you can see, I have my Caparison laying here. Going to be doing a little bit of work on it. We're going to be putting in a big brass block with stainless steel screws, some stainless steel saddle screws, and heavy duty springs, noiseless springs. I'm going to be putting all that on there, and I just wanted to make this kind of as a little instructional video to show mainly on a Caparison how to do it, because this bridge is a little different. It's the same basic principle, there's just a couple little things that might be a little different, like some measurements of the screws or something like that. So anything I come in contact with while I'm doing this, I want to address. That way, if you have any questions about this type of bridge, they'll be answered. The tools you're going to need to do this job will be the 2 Allen keys that came with your guitar. If you have them, if not, you should have some somewhere, you know, if you're doing this type of work on your guitar. So, anyway, let's get to it. So in case you haven't already, the first thing you might want to do is actually take off these screws that are holding in the back cavity cover. When you're doing this, you want to make sure whatever surface you're working on is soft enough that you can do the work you need to do, but it doesn't have too much give that it makes your work a lot harder. And as you could tell from the beginning of the video, under the headstock and neck area, I have a shirt that's rolled up to support that, just as a little extra measure. So the first thing you're going to want to do is obviously take the strings off your guitar. And the reason I'm doing that is because I have to get in under all of this. I have to take all the saddles off to make sure that I can get the brass block on. So I did forget to mention, when you're working on your guitar, if you want to have the whammy bar in, just to help you manipulate the bridge as needed, you can. Also, put a cloth or something like that that'll keep the bridge from hitting any of the wood or any of the sides or anything like that as you're doing some of this work. You'll thank yourself later for not damaging any of the cavity. So as I was saying, with the whammy bar, if you use it in the body, you can use it to manipulate the bridge and help you get the strings out. After you get your strings taken off and everything is looking pretty good, make sure that you have plenty of room also. So you notice I have this whole table here. So make sure that you have plenty of room so you don't hit anything or lose any tools or lose any pieces. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the whammy bar off just for myself. Shouldn't need it. Lay it down, and I'm going to easily take the springs out. And these should just pull out because they're already at the maximum allowed tension. And the claw will move around a little bit. You shouldn't have to worry about that. The only thing you need to worry about is make sure that you don't disconnect your ground. Your ground wire is connected usually in here somewhere, and it's most often connected to the claw, if not always. So then I'm going to be careful because I don't want this bridge to come flying off and scratch my awesome Caparison. So now I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to lift and get it out of the way. So when you go to reset the saddles, you kind of want to get them back as easy as possible back to being intonated. So to help you with that, take a picture, go ahead and take a picture of it. That way you can get in the ballpark of where they are. And take a couple. That way you can get all of them at the best angle possible. So now that I have the bridge completely out of the way, I don't need anything yet on this guitar. We're just going to focus solely on the bridge. So now that you have your bridge off, we're going to start with the first step. We're going to take these screws off the saddles so that way we can get to the screws holding in the block. So you're just going to put them in each one. Take it all the way off. So when you're taking these apart, undo the screws entirely. They will just go on and slide right out. And after you get the screw out, all you'll have to do is just pull forward and the entire piece comes out. And as you can see, Caparison does a really good job with making sure that their bridges are oiled. And what I mean is, they put, I believe he said it's a little bit of machine grease. And what that does is it helps things just stay fresh and be smooth with each other. Now that I've got my bridge apart, I'm going to remove these screws so that way that the block underneath can come out. And all you need for this is your Allen key. Big thing to remember, just be aware of where all your parts are anytime you're doing anything like this. So it's just like if you're doing things for like a gun or a car. If you mess up but you put all the parts back the proper way, it should work. So as you take your Schaller apart, you have the block, the buffer or the spacer, the claw, and then the bridge. So you end up with these parts. So we're essentially going to be replacing the screws with stainless steel screws and the block. So when you're putting on the brass block, you don't want to use the buffer or the spacer. So when you go to put that on, all you do is take these screws out and they come out super easy. So now you have all your parts. All you have to do is the claw will go back on, and then you want to make sure that your holes are going towards the claw on the inside. So that way when I screw it in, it's pulling this way because you need this big piece of brass to sustain. You don't want it coming over or across from it. So when you get with that, just put it on there, line the holes up, and then I'm going to be replacing it, like I said, with the stainless steel screws. You just pop right in there. Alright, so once you have your screws in on the Schaller, you have your big brass block in. Notice I have it so that the springs are going to pull it this way. The holes are near where the springs are going to go towards the claw. When you're looking at it, if you get it from this website, it'll say futone.com. That way you know that it's going the right way. Now we start the process of putting the saddles back on. So I have my stainless steel screws here. Pretty sure that's still going. So I have my stainless steel screws in here. And as you can tell, I have my older screws in there from the nut just in case. But always keep track of all your parts and keep them just in case. One additional piece you might want to look into if you're ordering stainless steel parts from floydupgrades.com or futone.com is that make sure that you let them know that you're using saddle screws for a Caparison Schaller bridge, because the actual screws that go into the saddle are a little bit longer. So now we're going to start putting these back on. So to put these on, all you should have to do is just slide it in through the claw there.
One thing I forgot to mention, when you put the saddles back into the bridge, you want to make sure that they go in corresponding to the fretboard radius. What this means is the outermost saddles will be shorter than the ones in the middle. As you can see from the picture, there's 3 different saddles. If you flip the saddles over, they go from numbers 0 to 2. On the bottom of the saddles you'll see this number, and it'll be 2, 1, or nothing for 0. So you want to make sure that the order from low E to high E is 2, 1, 0, 0, 1, 2.
So now that you have your saddles back on, to make your life a little bit easier instead of going overboard with intonating from scratch, pull up the pictures that you have and zoom in so that you can see where you need to kind of set it. Alright, so now I've got it really close to where I had it, and it should be almost exactly intonated when I put it on, if not exactly on it. So once you have this completed, your bridge is going to look kind of like this. I have the stainless steel screws in the saddles. I have replaced the block with the big brass block, and don't forget to remove the buffer plate, because when you use this block you no longer need it. So once you get your bridge set up how you like it, we're going to start putting it back inside the guitar. So we're going to be putting in these high tension noiseless springs. Now that I've got the guitar back, I have to start on putting the bridge back in. So what I usually do, obviously, I use my cover to make sure I'm not scratching up any of the cavity. It will sit right back where it was, and I've got this so that it can sit really still. I know there's various ways to do this. This is how I've liked to do it. You can do it however you want. Be careful with the next step because the bridge is loose, but usually it's not going to go anywhere. I use one hand to kind of hold it in place, and then from there I'm going to just be putting my springs in. To put in these noiseless springs, these are the high tension ones. We're only going to use 2. That was recommended from the owner of Caparison. So when you do this, you're going to want to go, he said you want to go from the outermost hole of the block in to the claw that is one in from the edge. So not the center, but one out. So with that, it should be pretty easy. And just so you know, these higher springs will be a little folded in at the moment because they are the higher tension. Once you get those in, you shouldn't have any worries with the bridge falling out, but just make sure that it's riding right as it should before you move on any farther. Now that you're at this stage, before you string up your guitar, you can clean the body any that you want, polish out any little fingerprints, and you can condition the fretboard or polish your frets if you want. So for conditioning the fretboard, I use Guitar Honey. I've trusted it for at least a decade. I've had this bottle a while. I use it on all my rosewood or ebony boards. And taking care of your fretboard is one of the most important things that you can do to make sure that your guitar is always ready to go. So I'm going to be putting on similar gauges that were already on the guitar, so that eliminates the need to really overcomplicate the intonation or any other set of things that I might have to do to the guitar. At this stage, after I've got my strings on, I use the same gauges as before that came stock, but with the heavier duty screws, it's setting a little far forward. So all you have to do is adjust the springs in the back. Since the bridge is forward a little bit, I have to pull the screws back, so that way it pulls on them just a little bit more to help get the bridge flush. And this may take a couple times. And this may take some time with some trial and error, really trying to find where that sweet spot is. So just take your time. You're not in any rush to get this step done. So when you're checking the intonation, right now I'm using a vibration tuner on the headstock. You want to push down on the 12th fret, you get your pitch, and then check the 12th fret harmonic. They should be the same pitch. Once you get all your strings on, your springs set to where the bridge is level, all you need to do is put the back plate on, and that'll be all you need to do.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was very in-depth, but I wanted to make sure, since it was so specific to Caparison, that I left no stone unturned. If you have any more questions, feel free to message me or email me, or email Caparison directly. They are great guys to work with, and I know that they would be more than willing to help you out. Thank you for watching.